Down to Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to 5 on the Floor. I am your host, Greg Sylvander. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Sylvander. Tonight's floor plan on 5 on the Floor. We're going to recap the Miami Heat's absolutely deflating, one of the worst high leverage game performances at home in recent memory, other than, I guess, the Eastern Conference Final stuff last year. I digress. It was a bad game against the Hawks. We're going to get into it. With me, we have not only who was along for the ride on playback, and I encourage all of our listeners to come check that out with us, because we will be there even for the play-in game for the 8th seed. Bryan Fonseca is with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Bryan Fonseca NY. And we also have the coach, Sean Rochester. You can follow him on Twitter as well. You know where to find him. He's also manning the 5 on the Floor account often. And so here we go. We're going to get into this game. But before we do, I want to shout out one of the great sponsors of this network, and that is Aggressive Insurance. Aggressive Insurance is an insurance agency that has been servicing South Florida for over 15 years. They offer auto, homeowners, condo insurance, life insurance, retirement programs, free notary service. So if you have a bad driving record, they represent all the leading insurance carriers. No problem. No driver is refused. Free phone quotes. Go to insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's in Lynette. Insurancebylynette.com. Again, that's Aggressive Insurance. Insurancebylynette.com. That's where you want to go for all your insurance needs. So, Brian, we watched this game. So I'm coming to you first because I got so highly frustrated by the offensive rebounding. It was awful.
Yeah, this sucked.
Like, it really did suck. The Hawks had 63 mother bleeping rebounds in this game, and 22 of them were on the offensive glass. I feel like all that was Clint Capella gobbling stuff up. Bam didn't look right. Bam looked disengaged, but I don't mean necessarily all the way mentally or emotionally disengaged. Okay, although I think fans are going to ask that question, and maybe we'll need to talk about that at some point. It was more that he wasn't moving around right, and I don't know if it has to do with that hip is bothering him. People will say I'm cranking up the excuse machine for Bam Adebayo, and I am the ultimate Bam Adebayo apologist. He wasn't moving like Bam that I normally see the way Bam moves. So take from that what you will. He had a bad game. Tyler played better in the second half, but it wasn't enough ultimately. They were clunky at the beginning of the game. Jimmy Butler missed bunny after bunny after bunny. This was a game where I've never seen him miss so many close shots, Brian. Your initial takeaways on what was the most deflating game of the season for Miami, the worst loss of the season considering the stakes, and particularly because of what happened on the glass, probably the game where it was most evident that they were outworked. What are your major takeaways right off the bat?
And my worst betting night of the season by far. Look, I think as it pertains to everything revolving around this game, this was terrible. And you can't. The thing is, looking back at it now that we're slightly removed from the start of this game, and Greg, you were there on playback with me, you felt it early. If you think about it now, you kind of felt it early, and it wasn't just the lead, but it was the energy. It was the missing of shots at point blank range. It was how, to the Hawks' credit, I don't think we do this enough, credit the other team. To the Hawks' credit, how they defended Bam, made him uncomfortable very early. He gets the ball. There's 2 on him. There's a third guy to his left. You know what I mean? Like, this would happen over and over. And then they just didn't even try to get him the ball. And then when he got the ball, he didn't do much with it as the game went, as we're going to talk about. This isn't
they picked up the pace too. Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that was another thing that they really did with intent that helped them.
sped Miami up, who's been lagging one of the last teams in pace for how many years now at this point, right? That's to their advantage. And if you're the Hawks, like that's how you're going to beat a team like the Miami Heat. But yeah, this is just Kyle Lowry. Without him, this would have been a blowout. Kyle Lowry played one of his best games in a Heat uniform, arguably his best game in a Heat uniform. It's this or maybe Game 6 in Boston, where he and Jimmy went off, but he was also there for a good portion of that. I think this was a bigger game, though, in terms of a bigger Kyle Lowry game, Kyle Lowry performance. Ultimately, though, just embarrassing. Don't even bother winning on Friday at this point. Like, I don't want to see Heat Bucks. I have no interest in watching that series. I'd rather them just lose gracefully to the Raptors and Bulls. Let's talk about what they can do to reshape this team, because that's kind of where I'm at. And I think as it pertains to just Bam's effort on the glass, and it's really the whole team, as there was no gang rebounding. Like, you watch, and it was a virtuoso rebounding performance that who could have seen this coming from the Atlanta Hawks. Clint Capella in particular was, as someone said in playback, Dennis Rodman-like. He got to the point where I'm watching the game. Greg and I are on playback. Sean's watching the game as well. And Clint Capella is beating guys to the spot, whether it's Bam boxing him out, whether it's Lowry, whether it's Caleb Martin.
Tracking the ball.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He's tracking the ball as it's up in the air, knows exactly where it's going, out-hustling dudes, out-hustling them to the spot. Bam is boxing him out, and Clint Capella almost lets him because he knows the ball's going to go over and I'm going to be able to get it. And Bam's out of position, so I'm just going to go get it. I just smacked my hands on a podcast. Great. And then, it's like John Collins was getting in there. Okongwu was a problem for them. So it was a very physical game. And to me, this all goes back to not addressing the 4 spot at the beginning of the season. Because if PJ Tucker's there, you have somebody else who can box out. You have somebody around the rim where, and I know Sean's going to disagree. To me, this is a big part of it, because, like, look, PJ Tucker would box out, get rebounds when Bam was away from the rim guarding guards and switching out on a perimeter. Jay Crowder did some of that too. And Caleb Martin is just not, like, he's closer to Trevor Ariza in that way. Like, I know they were defensively, rebounding wise, they were good all year, not this game. And I think this goes back to that. And that I felt like was going to hurt them more in the playoffs than in the regular season. And it did.
So to our loyal listeners on the podcast feed, you can watch this video on the YouTube channel. So when you talk about Bryan clapping on a podcast, you can see that. You can also see Sean's face in disgust when Bryan says that this is a PJ Tucker issue. And I have brought up the PJ Tucker's absence is something that I believe is a factor, but it's not as much PJ Tucker, the individual. It's PJ Tucker, the archetype. Having that in your locker room of some sort. Yeah. Anyway.
To be clear, not giving him the full mid-level wouldn't have done that. They were right to not do that. But I think they didn't bring in anybody else.
You're right. And so as I go to Sean, and you shook your head at that notion, so I'm interested to hear about what you think ails them and what would have changed a game where Clint Capella gets 20 rebounds and all of them feel like they were offensive rebounds, honestly. Like they literally all and you know how back-breaking and spirit-killing those are to like play a great defensive position, get them late in the shot clock, feel like you made your rotations, the shot goes up, it misses, and then they get the bleeping ball back. Sean, your takeaways of the game, I'd love to hear just generally what your thoughts were, but then honing in on the rebounding. And we're going to talk stats specifically after the break, and then also what they are going to do to look ahead. Because unfortunately, Bryan, you're here, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do any of that stuff, Sean, your initial takeaways from tonight's game and the rebounding in general, the effort in general. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it, Greg, that it's deflating when you give up offensive rebounds because defense is hard, right? That's the Heat culture foundation. It's built on defense since 1995, right? And when you work that hard to get a stop and then you give up a second or a third or a fourth chance, and I think, the Capella thing, it seemed like in theory, every time the ball is loose, it's 50-50, right? Either they're going to get it or we're going to get it. It certainly was not that way tonight. And whether it was bad luck, like deflections always seemed to go onto the Hawks' hands. Balls on the floor always went to the Hawks. 39% of their shots were offensive rebounded. That's pathetic. It's effort. And I shake my head because this came up on playback too, and I shook my head there too. PJ Tucker's not walking through that door. Jay Crowder isn't. PJ Brown isn't. Kurt Thomas, Grant Long, Greg, I don't know. Who else you want to throw in there? Like,
can we get like vintage UD?
Udonis has
Dwayne Coswell. You know what? And Udonis is about to walk out the door and he's not coming back, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It is a 5-man job to get the rebound. Okay. And that doesn't mean that I'm excusing Bam. Bam is a big part of that when you are the big on the floor. And when you look at the stat sheet and Capella has 21 rebounds, 8 offensive rebounds, you're going to point fingers at Bam, and he deserves blame tonight. But it's not all his job. It's everyone's job, especially in a scheme where you're switching a lot. And I know people don't like that, but there were times where I know people got mad at Kyle Lowry's guarding a big, and there were 2 guys going to the glass. He can't box them both out. It's whether that's scheme, whether that's a breakdown, whether that's a mistake or effort, whatever. It just didn't add up tonight. 22 offensive rebounds, 16 more offensive rebounds than the Heat. Unacceptable. It just, the Hawks are the 9th best offensive rebounding team in the league, which is obviously top 10. It's good. But the Heat are the 4th best defensive rebounding team in the league. They had the same size problems all year long. It wasn't something new tonight. I don't know what it is, whether you, like Greg said, Bam is hurt. Something didn't work tonight, whether it's size, length, athleticism, desire, I don't know. But everything else, and when we get into the stats, it's so damn even. Turnovers, effective field goal percentage, free throw rate, offensive rating, all those important stats. It's so even. If you just don't let them go plus 16 from the glass, cut it down to plus 10, you might win the game. Like it's so frustrating, but that's the last 82 games, right? Like everything's been frustrating with this team, unfortunately. And I just push back a little bit on, I know we're not talking about PJ Tucker in particular, because first of all, the Sixers are like middle of the pack offensive rating and defensive rebounding, I should say.
They don't know how to use it.
It's just, they don't. You're right. I mean, Glenn is not a very good coach, unfortunately. So it's one of those things. So I just think, I don't know. The solution was not there tonight. And it's an embarrassing way to go out getting beat on the glass.
Well, I'll say this. I don't know what the solution is going forward when you get outworked like that. If I just looked correctly, and I don't have the box score in front of me anymore, but I think I looked, did neither team have a turnover this whole game?
No, they had to.
Miami had an 8% turnover rate and Atlanta had a 12%. So 2 very low rates for
got it.
Especially for Atlanta, the pace that they played.
I must have had a filter on of some kind. Anyway, to your point about everything being so even, for me, and we're going to talk about the ODM performance solution of the night. It is that 5-man gang rebounding. Like they needed that tonight more than ever. I'm glad that you articulated so well, just how much of those shots that they offensive rebounded. Like you have no chance to win games when that's happening to you over and over again, because you're getting stops and you're not getting the opportunity to make the other team pay on the other end. So that is absolutely clean up the glass. That is my ODM performance solution of the night. But that's hard. Team building is hard. Ask Miami. You're seeing it in action. ODM Performance Solutions. They can help you build a winning team. They can offer solutions to find you people in the legal field. They can also find you C-suite level leadership, sales rainmakers, management, operational support. Check out ODM PSI or give them a call at 954-434-0634. Again, that's ODM PSI. They are going to help you with all of your staffing needs, particularly in IT, in legal, in the entire legal field. You definitely want to reach out to odmpsi.com or 954-434-0634. So, I mean, Max and Gabe, that's getting weirder and weirder by the minute, because like when you look at how they played tonight, they had to play them. They played less than the bench guys did. And I just don't know how you can pay them long-term money. And I know I'm getting big picture. I don't want to go too far into that. So I'm interested just how y'all feel about Gabe and Max at this point. We're kind of like winding down our evaluation period of these guys. We talked about Bam earlier. Tyler, let's stay with Tyler for a minute. I felt like some of his points, this is going to sound bad. Some of them baskets late in the second half were kind of empty. And so like when they really needed him to go nuts, I don't think they really got it. Am I being unfair to him, Bryan?
He was fine. He helped provide a spark during that third quarter run, which got them back within 6. So I think that's to be commended. But overall, I mean, he was fine. I mean, I don't think this is not that you're implying this. I don't think this is a Tyler loses them the game or doesn't play well enough against, a decent team in a big game. I don't think it's one of those necessarily. It's just he was fine. He didn't probably
shot well.
Yeah, he didn't come like in watching the game, though, in the fourth quarter when they needed a run, it was basically Kyle Lowry. Jimmy tried. Bam tried, but neither of them got it done. I think, look, there's going to be time for big picture stuff, right? Which we're all going to get into. But I think this is a scenario that a lot of people would admit that they preferred if they weren't going to actually get to a certain point in this season, not just to get a high draft pick, but just from the standpoint of like, you're really going to have some real questions about what they're going to do in the offseason. And I think Pat Riley, and this is something that we've spoke about off air, you spoke about it on a pod recently. I don't think it's cool that media fans haven't really been addressed amid their sort of lack of moves or this transaction turmoil, if you want to call it that, in a bigger picture thing, which is to say, I think whatever Pat Riley says at the end of the season, whenever Baggy Day comes, is going to be fascinating. And I don't know if it's going to be indicative of like where they're actually going to go. Maybe it is if you read between the lines. I don't know how blunt it's going to be. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I think at this point, you're going to have some real questions about what is and isn't on the table based on not just this game, but this season in totality. Because a lot of the worries people had coming into tonight that people disregarded because everyone was picking the Heat. I mean, everybody was picking the Heat to win this game. A lot of those worries came back up. And then when you look at it now that it's past you, you're kind of like, yeah, this isn't totally surprising because this team has just kind of been this inconsistent all season long.
They did it again.
Yep, they did it again. That's the name of this episode.
Right. They did it again. That is a good name. Sean has been so kind to drop a lot of Spoelstra's quotes in the chat. I'll read a couple of them so that they're here on the show. You'll get them first. They definitely, with their length, made them look like they're 2 places at once. It looked like sometimes they were 4 places at once. Tyler said they beat the hell out of us on the boards at the end of the day. That's what it is. And then I'll end by just saying that they're supposed to said we're going to get to the film on it. We're a good defensive rebounding team. Second chance points 26-6 for the Hawks. I mean, Sean, how do they clean up the offensive rebounding? But also Bam and Jimmy combined to shoot 35% tonight. Is that just those bunnies go in and that's fixable? What do you think they can do if it's not effort? Like, what the hell is it in this circumstance? Because a comedy of errors is hard for me to quantify. If you're a coach and it's not effort, is it really because like of long misses and like just that wonky shit? Like, is that really what it could be?
I cannot attribute 40% of offensive rebounds going to the other team when you naturally have better defensive position to weird bounces, wonky shit. No, I mean, come on. That's got to be you're not going to come out there and say effort, and maybe he should, but it just doesn't add up. And think about what you have coming down. The next game, the Toronto and Chicago game is played tomorrow, right?
Correct.
And then we play them on Friday, whoever wins.
Correct.
You think that Toronto's not salivating with all of their length and size? I mean, they're all about the same length and size, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", just to come after us and try to, Vooch isn't the same type of offensive rebounding threat as Capella, but they have size. I mean, Chicago brings more with the pressure on the guards, and it's just one of those frustrating things. And to go back to one of the things you brought up to Brian with Max and Gabe, on a personal level, you got to hope that Gabe isn't seriously hurt going into free agency, because if he's seriously hurt, not that he was probably going to command a big payday, that's really going to hurt him. And he's a guy that, obviously hasn't been paid yet. So, Max is a deflating as those offensive. Yeah. I mean, as deflating as those offensive rebounds are, Max being wide open for threes and just cannot knock them down, that's deflating too. And, all these things adding up, it was there for the taking. I don't leave this thinking if this was a 7-game series, you think the Hawks would have beat us 4 out of 7 times?
Hell no.
But we've also been misled 82 times pretty much. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I still feel like we're the better team, but I just, it's just this one of these seasons. I just don't have any explanation. Now, Greg, you compared it to going back to that Hornets series when Zoe came back sick. It just feels like that. I'll let you elaborate on that, not steal your take, but
no,
bad season.
I should have mentioned it earlier. We pre-show, I was saying, remember that series where the Hornets played the Heat, and the Hornets were just a step faster every moment of that series. They just wanted it more. They wanted to prove that, when EJ and Mace were in Miami and Mash and PJ were in Charlotte, that they were going to make a point. And Mashburn sure did make that point. And this game felt similar to that. I meant from an effort perspective. Thank you for calling that out. It's funny when I look at Prize Picks, I went over, and this was something on the 5 on the Floor account that we promoted. You should go over on Kyle Lowry's assists. He did get to 5, so he was over his projection.
Like the only one I hit.
Jimmy Butler was the taco of the night. He was down from 27.5 points to 23.5, and he still went under. But use the code 5, FIVE, to get your initial deposit matched up to $100. It is the best daily fantasy app on the market. Use the app. You can use the desktop as well. Go to www.prizepicks.com, but use the code 5, FIVE, to get your initial deposit matched up to $100. So, looking ahead, it's going to be Toronto or Chicago. Just quick thoughts, because we literally have about 8 minutes before we got to close. I'm watching the clock here at the top of the screen. Brian, I'll start with you. Sean, you'll close, and then I'll tie a bow on this thing. One, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, but don't be long-winded. Who do you think that they're going to play? I'm asking you 3 questions. Who do you think they're going to play? Do you think they will win? And would you rather they win or get the opportunity to be in the draft lottery? 1, 2, 3.
I think they'll play Toronto. Honestly, I feel like it's going to be one of those things where, of course they win this game, right? We look back and it's
which will be in Miami,
right?
Just to clarify for our listeners.
They're going to be at home. You think they're going to lose because of the effort they just had, which has happened during the season, and then all of a sudden they win a game you don't expect, and it's of course. And then they got to play the Bucks.
Great.
I'm cool. I don't need to see this team anymore. I'm good on the season. I've told you Jimmy's one of my favorite players in the NBA to watch, but I think I'm cool. Bam is also up there for me, but oh boy, that's gonna be something that we'll talk about in the spring. And then aside from that, I think look, I'll tell you what, I ain't betting any money on this fucking game that's coming up. That shit ain't happening no more.
For a little bit of backstory, one of the ways that Brian made tonight exciting was he went hard on Better Edge, used the code 5RSN for $20 to play, and also code 5 for Prize Picks. So he was active on both of those apps. And so I'm hearing you wanting the lottery instead. Sean, those 3 questions right at you.
I think we're going to play Chicago. I already have Chicago +5 and Chicago money line on Better Edge. Use the code 5 reason. Get that $20 free from Ethan's pocket.
And may I say, you should always take the coach Sean Rochester's advice because he be earning loot on Better Edge.
I'm trying to put them out of business.
Hey,
no,
I write at Action Network. All right, I do too, just not tonight.
Yeah.
Well, wait till we got boxing. Wait till we got boxing. Come back around this weekend and next weekend. We got Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia coming up, baby.
The earnings in the last 7 days were posted on social media recently. That's the only reason why I'm bringing that up, Sean. It went.
I was
public.
at like an 80. Yeah, I was at like an 80% clip there for a week. I have Chicago +5. I think Chicago's guard play is going to get them through. I think it's going to be an ugly game tomorrow. I don't plan on watching it. I don't want to scout it or get ready for it. I think Chicago gets through. And do I think we can beat Chicago? Yes. Do I care to watch them beat them? I don't really care, but I would rather see them make it, even if I don't think we have no chance to beat the Bucks. They are the best team in the NBA. I think they're going to win the championship. So while I would like to get us some extra ping pong balls, I'm not going to root against them on Friday. And I don't think Bryan is either. I just think he's thinking logically in terms of long-term plans. So I get that too. So yeah, I think Chicago wins. We beat Chicago and Bucks sweep us right out of there. We'll be done in about a week. 1, 2, 3 Cancun.
Yes. I am going to go with a victory by Chicago, followed by another victory by Chicago.
Another one.
Followed by a lottery appearance by the Miami Heat. Followed by the basketball gods raining down upon us. And they jump up into the lottery. I'm hope trafficking on a really, really rough night, y'all. Thank you for joining us to Better Edge, to Prize Picks, to ODM PSI, to A Aggressive Insurance, insurancebyLynette.com. We appreciate your sponsors. Bryan, Sean, thank you for joining us. It was a bad one. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. It was ugly. We don't know where direction this team is heading.
Watch these fools win on Friday. Watch.
But you know what? That would be the nature of this team, but ultimately that's going to be a fatal flaw, and we're seeing it become more and more fatal every game. And we'll be back, and we'll have you covered for the play-in matchup for the 8th seed. Woohoo! Let's go Heat. Good night.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.